Hi, welcome once again to Pauline Interviews. Today I'm at New Renaissance Bookstore. It's in Northwest Portland on 23rd Street. Is the largest metaphysical books, that's hard to say in the morning, the largest metaphysical bookstore on the West Coast, and I'm really happy they let me use the space here. They bring all sorts of interesting authors and people who do workshops and lectures, and today I have the privilege to interview Dr. Linda Backman, and Linda is a psychologist, but she made an interesting transition a number of years ago. But I'm going to let you listen to Linda. She's going to tell you a little bit about her background and about the transition she made. Linda, welcome, and thank you so much for spending this time with me. I know we've got a short amount of time because you're doing a great workshop right after we do this talk.
Yes, thank you, Pauline. It's always good to put this information out for people to watch and to learn about and that sort of thing. So, my story. I'll make it short
And sweet.
and short and sweet. Yes. My story is that I was a licensed psychologist. I am a licensed psychologist, and up until about 21 years ago, I was doing general psychology work. I was doing what people would imagine a psychologist does in private practice.
When did you start? Was it in '73?
I started. I started in practice as a psychotherapist in the late 70s.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah, long time. So I've been in practice 35, 36 years, something of that flavor. So I was a traditional, conventional psychologist until the early 90s. And in the early 90s, not being spiritually oriented, not being someone who snooped around a wonderful spiritual bookstore like where we are with New Renaissance, my original psychologist colleague had been diagnosed in 1991 with a very serious kind of lung cancer. He was 31 years old. This was shocking. The doctors told him he wouldn't survive. And just as they told him, after massive surgery, after massive treatment, in the spring of 1993, in April 1993, back then I would have said he died from the disease. And today I would say he transitioned out of his body, essentially.
So what the doctor said did actually come to pass.
Completely, which was hard for many of us to accept. He was a very respected psychologist. He was married.
And he was young.
He was young. He was 32 when he passed. He had a child, a young daughter. So when he passed, I started having spiritual experiences that I'd never had before. I was kind of a non-believer. So, for instance, two things happened. One, when he passed, almost immediately, I could sense his energy around me. For people who've had that experience, they know what that feels like. I just knew he was present, and I started intuiting communication from him.
When you say intuiting, I've been reading a book about different ways spirits communicate. Were you getting pictures in your head? Were you hearing his voice? Were you feeling his, you did say you felt his energy.
Right.
How were you getting his spirit?
In the way that I now teach people to be sure they don't ignore, and that is what I would call claircognition. So clair, like clairvoyance, means that intuitive, clairvoyance is intuitive vision. So like eyes closed or in the back of your mind, you get images. What happened with his presence is that it was really claircognition. I was just getting these thoughts, like he was saying, Linda, be sure to handle this in the office. Be sure to handle that in the office. And I thought, why are you bothering with me? Go tend to and comfort your wife, comfort your daughter. At the same time, Pauline, I started having, now I would say, clairvoyant experiences. I'd read one book about past lives, didn't know what to do with it, wasn't sure if I believed in it.
Was this before or after the contact with your this gentleman?
Before.
Before, okay. So
I had a client come in one day, maybe a year or two before he passed, before my colleague passed. And she had an adult son die, and she kind of thrust this spiritual book about past lives in front of me. She said, oh, Linda, read this. This just helps me so much. So I took it home, Pauline, I read it, and I thought, kind of interesting, don't know what to do with this. Then, my colleague's name was Bud. Then Bud passed. And besides the fact he was present and communicating with me, I started sensing images in my mind that, again, cognitively, I knew were past lives with him, and I knew that a person in the scene was the same soul that he was. So I couldn't argue with it. It's like I knew what I was experiencing. So then I turned to my husband, and we'd been married for, 20 or 25 years at the time, and I said, you're going to think this is nuts. And he was friends with my colleague, with Bud. They played golf together, they had lunch together. And I said, here's what's going on. We're so sad that Bud has just died at 32 years old. But I said, here's what's going on. He's here, he's talking to me, and he's showing me past lives. And I said to my husband, Earl, don't you think this is bizarre? And he honestly looked at me just as you're looking at me and said, no, I don't. And I said, why not? Totally true, candid story.
I don't think my husband would have reacted that way.
Well, I thought he'd sort of strap me.
Yeah, you have a good husband.
Straight
He's
jacket,
open-minded.
send me off to the mental
Yeah,
health
really.
facility. I said, why aren't you shocked? And he said, well, here's why I'm not shocked. He said, until you brought this up, I had completely repressed what happened to me when I was a kid.
Really?
But he said, now that you've brought this forward, he said, as a boy, I remembered I had past lives. I never doubted that I had past lives. And I remembered one particular life specifically. And he said, I just put it away because I thought everybody would think I was crazy, he said. So fortunately, Pauline, then I had support. So it was like, all right, I've got to go read, I've got to go study. How does this work? And that's what led me into beginning to learn how to guide past life regression. And then I began sprinkling that into my general psychology practice.
I've noticed this about a lot of people who've gotten into metaphysics. Before that, they were completely, what do you want to say, scientific, left brain, and it seems like through circumstance, happy circumstance, they're led into that path. So it was like it's meant to be.
Right. I totally agree.
So you've been doing past life regression therapy now for how many years did you do?
About 21 years.
21 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so you studied, it made sense to you. Did you have to train to become a past life? I don't think, just because you're a psychologist means you could take somebody back to past life. I'm sure you need some special training.
That is completely correct. If you went to a university that trained people as psychologists, they'd probably roll their eyes and say, we don't train people in past life. So no, I had to take hypnosis training, which fortunately I had taken years before. So I didn't then need to add that in. I had that learning in my background. But then I took training to guide past life regression. And even initially, like probably some of your listeners, I thought, does this really work? Can people really access their past lives? But, I'm here to say 21 years later, having written 2 books, yes, absolutely.
Why would a person want to even come to explore past life? What might be some of the reasons a person would come to you?
Because, if I make it simple, we come into body to advance as a soul. We come into body to evolve as a soul. The only way we evolve is through the experiences of our lives. So, to make it overly simplified, when we uncover past lives, we either uncover a skill, an ability, an experience that we never thought, that we don't think in current life that we have, like being comfortably, having a comfortable type of work, having a comfortable relationship, raising children. Or, and I want the listeners to know it's or, not always a traumatic, sometimes and not infrequently, we have past lives with complex experience, what we might call trauma.
Which might be affecting us now.
That is exactly right.
Well, how come we can't remember these? How come we have all this stuff stuffed inside of us and we're dealing with it? I mean, isn't it hard enough to deal with the present life? Then you have to go back to many lives ago. It seems all so complicated.
Right. So why do we have amnesia? That's a question that always is asked. Why do we have amnesia? So easy to explain. Let's just say I meet you and we become dear friends. If I knew that I'd been married to you, and we've all been male and female, so you've been both, if I was married to you and you died after we've been married 6 months and I was deeply in love with you as my partner, or maybe you harmed me, then I'd say, well, oh my goodness, Pauline, I don't want to be friends with you. But in order to clean that up, having a friendship and balancing that out we might say clean up, probably yours too, but clean up my soul trajectory. That's karma.
It explains a lot of things too in life as you go through life. Like some people have, I have an affinity towards a certain country, and when I moved there, I thought, oh, I feel like I'm home, and I love music, and I love to sing, and some of the talents and abilities from previous lives we bring into this life, as well as some of the trauma.
That's right.
So let's say I called you up and say, Linda, I want a past life regression, and I come to the office. How do you proceed?
Well, first, we spend about 20-30 minutes with interview and preparation and grounding. It's like explaining, some people think, well, oh my goodness, you're going to hypnotize me. And if you know, if you're the client, well, if I'm hypnotized, will I remember? Will you make me do something stupid? Will you take control of me? Will I get stuck in a trance? Those are all old wives' tales. So I help normalize the process of just guiding you into a quieter and more relaxed place. But I also kind of seek to understand, so who are you? That way, when you uncover a past life, I can help you fit it into the framework of why you're embodied today and why you needed to learn that information to help you progress in your life today. So it's all therapeutic.
Can anybody be hypnotized or back to past life? Anybody can? And if they can't, maybe it's because they haven't been prepared the way you prepare the person. Because honestly, I tried it and I didn't get the preparation, and I didn't get anywhere with a single past life. And I did it as research when I was doing an interview. But I did, for my own edification, did a group past life regression. And I did feel that they start by saying, what's on your feet?
Yeah, that's common.
Yes. And I did. I got images 2 different times of 2 different lifetimes. But with the singular one, I couldn't seem to. I don't know whether my mind was working analytically, because I'm going to be doing an interview, and sometimes I'm producing in my brain.
Sure.
So, but everybody with the proper preparation should be able to be taken to a past life.
I think it's probably unfair to say 100% of all the people that want to have a past life regression can get there. My experience is maybe 2% don't get there. They don't get there for 2 or 3 different reasons. They could be, I hate to say overly nervous, because people, again, watching this are going to think, well, I'm nervous, so it won't work. And there are many ways to calm that down. Some people just get in the way, okay? But by and large, that doesn't
like
happen.
analyzing, like I was doing. Yeah.
But I would say, again, maybe only 2% of people cannot, access a past life. Sometimes it's a past life that the client needs to examine, and it's very complex, and they're having trouble allowing it to come forward because they need to learn about it, and unbeknownst to them in their conscious mind, there's a certain amount of blockage. But again, that's rare.
So a couple of questions on when they go back. Number one is, do the most important lives come up for them? I mean, because how many lives have we had before? They vary, don't they, from person to person?
Probably you or I have had hundreds, if not 1,000 or more lives. So the life that comes forward, if you were my client today, theoretically, the life that would come forward for you is a life your spiritual guides want you to examine because it's pertinent to something right now in your current life.
So you're being guided. You were being guided by your guides and the person's guides?
That's right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now I want to talk a little bit more about guides. Now I did sit in on a regression of somebody else when I was doing my research.
Okay.
And this woman was a male in all her incarnations, and every one of them were extremely difficult. And either this woman was the best actress I'd ever seen, or she was going through some horrific, she was having emotional upheavals. And I'm thinking to myself, aren't you supposed to be an observer rather than, did you relive these experiences, or do you observe them to protect you?
That's a great question. It's both. For some clients, it's observation, because the client is not wanting to be in that body of the person. In my experience, Pauline, the clients I work with generally relive being that person. And the value of that is that, and not that they have to, but the value of that is that they really then feel it, sense it, experience it, and then it's easier to let go.
Okay, so when you experience a lifetime that was traumatic, that's cathartic. That energy leaves your body. So let's say I'm claustrophobic.
Right. Yeah.
And I can experience whatever caused that claustrophobia, and then I can move on.
Yes.
And I have an aunt that has to do that. She won't fly to the United States to see me from Wales because she's claustrophobic.
Yeah.
But I doubt whether she'd get the therapy. Do you have to believe in reincarnation for it to work?
You have to have a leaning toward believing in reincarnation, because if you don't, your own, how can I explain this? So your brain is receiving the information. That's the only way it works. if in your own conscious mind you don't have the kind of the file of thought, if you will, then it does make it harder. You don't have to be fully convinced, but you do have to have kind of a leaning in the direction of, yes, I think this is likely real.
So we're learning about these past lives because basically we're on this earth plane to learn and to advance spiritually.
That's right.
And we have these guides that help us. But what amazes me is, I don't know, like you, I didn't have any accident that propelled me into metaphysics. One day, all of a sudden, I'm just getting more and more involved, and I just love it. It's one of my 3 passions. And I feel that maybe, and I've always been open to these ideas, maybe I was either a teacher in a past life or a healer. I'm very interested in the healing arts too, extremely interested. And anytime I hear somebody's sick, like your poor friend, I almost wish I do Reiki, just Reiki too, but I always want to come over and hold somebody's hand or put my arm around them and help heal them. So I feel I have that kind of what do you want to say, an inner feeling that I want to use whatever I,
Yes, you've probably been a healer far more than once.
More than
that would be my hunch.
Yeah. Now I want to get just a little bit on guides because besides, I don't know how I got into metaphysics, like you had these things happen in your life. I've never had anything happen in my life that I am aware of. Most people in this Western world are still not, I don't know what the percentage is, believing in reincarnation, but I think people are getting more and more metaphysically aware.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at here, the New Renaissance bookstore.
Right.
But as far as guides go, how do we connect? I mean, if we have these guides to help us, how do we connect with them?
Sometimes we're connecting with them and we don't even realize we are. So sometimes it varies from person to person. For me in the past, before I literally sensed that I could connect specifically with my guides, they guide us with our inclinations, our thoughts, our, well, I feel like
protection too.
Or protection. You know, I don't know why I stopped at that stoplight and waited longer before I went on across than it was green.
Yeah.
But so they feed us through our intuition. And our intuition is how we sense them.
And we can open up our intuition.
Absolutely.
Which I want to talk about between lives, but before I do, and I want to make sure I have enough time to talk about what you do, about your center, your Ravenheart Center, what kind of work you do, and how people can get in touch with you, and your husband also does this kind of work. So tell us a little bit about the work you're doing.
Okay. So our center is called the Ravenheart Center. We are based in Colorado, in the Boulder, Colorado area. I guide regression, so I guide 2 types of regression. I guide past life regression, and I know we'll get into it briefly, between lives regression. So I won't define that, but I guide both types of regression. I also do a fair amount of what I call spiritual mentoring. That's helping someone with a combination of my psychology background and my understanding of why we come into body, that we have past lives, and how all that affects our life today. Working with who we are and what's happening in life today. I do, I call that spiritual mentoring. I do that by phone and face-to-face. I guide past life regression face-to-face and by phone, which actually works fine. But I don't guide between lives regression by phone. I feel like I need to be with the client.
Okay. I was going to ask you, by phone, past life regression, you feel that you can control it enough that the person won't, that they'll be safe?
I thought that it wouldn't work. So for probably 10 years I guided regression and never was even willing to consider guiding phone regression. Then I decided to try it. The client does very, very well.
Okay, there's never been a problem.
There's literally, in probably 10 or 12 years, there's never been a problem. I also train people in regression work. So I train people in past life regression, that's like regression 101, and I train people in between life regression, and that's what I might call regression 301.
Yeah, a little bit higher level. Now, let's caution people, if they want to go for past life regression, they don't want to just look in the phone book and go, hypnotist, oops, you really need to have somebody credentialed and somebody you can trust.
You want somebody who's trained in past life regression work. Preferably, there are organizations, ours included, that offer certification. But you want to both trust your left brain and your right brain. So read about that person and look for their training, look for their experience, call them and talk to them, get a feel, but trust your intuition as well, because you're going to get a hit. I feel comfortable with this person. Nope, I don't feel comfortable with this person.
You got to learn to trust your intuition, though. I'm not sure many of us do.
I think that's true, and I think if just quite simply, I am saying to people, if you just get a sense, this doesn't feel right,
Yeah.
or completely opposite, I don't know
Yeah.
why, but I'm drawn to this person.
I think a lot of us do, but we don't act on it. We think, oh, no, I'm just being silly. You're an author. You've authored 2 books now. One is out. Tell us a little bit about that one, and one's coming out this year.
Right, correct. So the first book is called Bringing Your Soul to Light. Both books are all written with client cases, so it's all client material, past life and between lives. Bringing Your Soul to Light came out in 2009, about 5 years ago. Lots of cases about guides, life purpose, complex life circumstances and what that's all about, what that means. Book number 2, I became more brave. So book number 2 also.
Where'd you go there?
So it's called The Evolving Soul, and it goes into more detailed spiritual, metaphysical topics like lives other than on this planet. And if you'd asked me 20-some years ago, did I even believe in lives other than on this planet, I'd say no. I have clients that spontaneously go to lives elsewhere. So we talk about split incarnations, we talk about...
Would that be twin souls?
No, depending on how you use that term. When I speak about split incarnations, I mean that there could be 2 aspects, use as an example, Pauline, there could be 2 separate aspects of your soul in 2 different bodies.
That's what I refer to as twin soul.
Yeah.
I came across one doing some research, and
Yeah.
it was pretty interesting, even with my open mind. I go, are you sure you're the same soul?
It's very fascinating.
Yeah, it's very fascinating.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about that, but you brought it up. I was going to ask you, besides twin soul, I was going to ask you about incarnating other than planet Earth. So, and not only are there other planets, but there are other planes of existence as well. Do we always have to come back in a body? Can we progress spiritually in another form or another place?
To the best of my understanding, we gain the greatest evolution by coming into body. It's not to say there aren't what I would call interdimensional experiences, but we have lives here in body, we have lives on other planets, in other star systems, within our solar system, and outside of our solar system. My understanding from many, many regressions with clients, and I do regressions far more than once a week, is that there are more souls on the planet today that have had the bulk of their lives somewhere else than
The
ever.
bulk?
Mhm.
That blows my mind.
And they're often young people,
Uh-huh.
not always, but they're often children.
We're not talking about crystal children or
We are
indigos.
talking about indigos, rainbows,
Yeah.
crystal children. They come with...
They're more highly evolved spirits
That's right.
to help us on this planet.
You got it.
Yeah,
You got
yeah,
it.
I do my research.
We need them.
We do need them, we really, really do.
They're very wise souls, and we need their perspective because they come from places that primarily are egalitarian, places where we treat each other with equality, we honor where we live, we take care of the planet or the star system where we live, we eat appropriately. Obviously, we don't live on a planet where that's basically the way
Yeah.
life is lived.
And it always amazed me that we haven't learned in however many thousands of years we've inhabited this planet that we shouldn't be killing each other.
That's right.
I mean, it's like, when are we ever going to learn these things? It's like, this really is a true schoolhouse. True schoolhouse. Now
Absolutely.
this question is probably neither here nor there, but I've always wondered about babies that are stillborn. Does that mean the soul decided, I don't want to go into that lifetime?
Yes, and it can mean more than that. So sometimes the parent or parents,
Mhm.
one of them needs that experience. They need that experience of learning to deal with loss. It's usually a balancing, a karmic, what we might call karmic balancing issue, where the parents need to learn. But yes, I think there are circumstances where the soul, and I don't think this is common, but where the soul basically, if we could say a soul has a mind, the soul changes its mind.
Yeah. You know, that's interesting about karma. We didn't really hit upon it, but most people know what karma is. It's cause and effect. You do something and you get an effect. So in a perfect world, I think, say you did something bad to someone, rather than you coming back in this life and them stabbing you, wouldn't it be better for you to come back in this life and help them with their lives? I mean, is it a choice? Is it a choice? Do you say, well, we're gonna talk about between lives, and that's when we make our decisions, I guess. I mean, do you say, I would rather come and help you than you go ahead and eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and kill me in this lifetime? I mean, you have your choice of going either way.
I don't honestly think that karma is resolved purely by the eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth
No, I don't
perspective.
either.
So there are many ways to resolve that. You know, if you've been married to someone and maybe you mistreated them, that doesn't mean you have to experience their mistreatment. That may mean you have to experience being married or being siblings and having a comfortable give and take relationship, but not, you know, killing or
Right.
harming.
I would think an evolution of soul would be a positive aspect, not going backwards and being a negative aspect. Now, since we have all these souls on the planet, and we talked about being older souls or younger souls, so are souls continuously being created? And where are they coming from?
My
divine source?
understanding, well, yes, I believe that souls are created. They come from, as you say, a divine source. We also, as we advance as a soul, we have the ability to be in many more than just one body, as I referred to a few minutes ago. So we can't just think about the population on the planet. We can't just say, oh, well, there's this many more people. That doesn't necessarily mean that's this many more souls. It, you know, it
Yes.
varies.
It could be, the person could be having several, and then other people from other existences are now here on
That's
the
right.
planet. I wanted to see if there's anything else I wanted to ask you about
Okay.
reincarnation before we move on to between lives, which I find very fascinating. In fact, I've read, you've studied with Dr. Michael Newton, and I've read two of his books, Journey of Soul and Destiny of Souls, and
Okay.
that is really, really fascinating. And I guess we already know that souls change sex and race, sexual orientation, and other places. So I've covered most of everything I wanted to talk to you about. So let's talk about your work with Dr. Michael Newton, and then how you went ahead to do your own research.
Okay, okay. I met Michael Newton in about 1998, 1999. He was in his later 60s. He had been doing between lives regression for many, many years. That's what he wrote his books about. And he was ready to start training people for the first time in the tool that he created to learn who are we as a soul, not just who are we in past lives. So he asked me to take his initial training. I did. I found it fascinating. I then worked with Michael for a number of years, helped expand the training, create the training manual, worked with him with the organization that was developed around that group. And then I left in about 2005 to run my own training program, do my own work and writing.
It must be a little trickier to get somebody to go between lives and, you know, back to a past life. I mean, how do you guide them to go between? And what are we doing there in between? And what do we look like? And where do we stay? And all those questions.
So between lives regression is longer, as you might imagine, than a past life regression. It's stepping through a past life, moving through it scene by scene, however many scenes that the guides of that client want the client to look at, going all the way to the ending of the life, and then we step into the time between lives. That training is a 5-day intensive training, so it's very different to guide a client into the time between lives. It's very different to guide them, when I say to the place of being deep enough, I don't mean the client is unaware of what's going on, but it's an intensive training.
Well, we have all these different brain levels, like alpha, beta, theta, I don't remember.
That's
but
right, that's right.
Beta, alpha, theta, gamma. So they're probably alpha, theta, maybe brain, they're
Yes.
very, very slow.
Absolutely, you've done your homework.
I've done my homework.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm fast, I love this stuff.
Yeah, so yes, in the alpha or theta brainwave state is where they access the time between lives. That's where almost always guides step in. The client learns whatever the guides want them to learn. How did I plan my current life? What's the overriding purpose of my life? For what reason did I struggle with my mother? Why was our, you know, just as an example, who are the souls I incarnate with most often? Why
Do
am
we
I,
incarnate, I hate to interrupt you, but I forgot, do we incarnate in groups?
yes.
We do group incarnation. So like our mother maybe was our uncle or aunt, past, so we tend to, in the groups,
Yes.
relatives and friends. And
We incarnate with a small group, 8 to 15 souls, the most often. And just like you're saying, and this sometimes shocks people, it's like, well, your child of today could have been your parent. your brother of today.
Well, I know my daughter was my parent, the way
Yeah.
she takes care of me. I
Yes.
just intuitively know that she was a parent to me.
I had that same experience
Yeah,
in
we're
my
very,
own
we're
life.
very
It's like-
close.
It's like, you must have been my parent because
Yeah.
you talked to me like you were my
Yeah,
parent.
she takes
Yes.
care of me like a mother too.
Yeah, how nice.
It's wonderful.
How nice.
Yeah.
So we have this little group,
Mhm.
and then we have adjacent groups, and that create a conglomerate soul group. Conglomerate soul groups take on larger tasks on the planet. Conglomerate soul groups take on jobs to, you might say, not to be overly esoteric, to move humanity forward.
Well, I'm not quite sure I followed you on that. Conglomerate, you mean there's souls that take care of large groups of people, is that what you're saying?
So if this
An
is,
example?
if in my
Like
fist.
Gandhi?
Yes, that's a great